Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den. I'm Dad. I'm pointing this way. I'm Dad. This is my den. And today I want to talk about some comic books. And I want to specifically talk about some Marvel DC crossover comic books that were published in the late 70s to just about mid 80s, before relationships between the two companies soured a bit and the whole concept was put on hold. Um, Three of these books were done in the large treasury size edition. One of them was your normal comic book size. And frankly, all four of them are worth taking a look at, for various reasons. So first of all, let's take a look at the four books that I'm talking about. Now, first up, we have the very first collaboration, Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man. It's always done as a versus, but usually, they're working together as the comic goes on. Really stunning, beautiful cover. Just nothing wrong with this. This is fantastic. $2. $2. I want my $2. This was followed up with Superman and Spider-Man, featuring the murderous menace of Doctor Doom and the Parasite. This was apparently more of a Marvel book. DC kind of looked over it, but creatively it came primarily from Marvel. Have a painted cover. Got to be honest, don't like it as much as the other one. Price has gone up to $250 here. The third book, Batman versus the Incredible Hulk. The blazing battle you never expected to see, which is probably true. Although the Hulk was, I think, still pretty popular on TV at this point. So it kind of makes sense that they'd want to get him out there in a book that might be more attractive to non-comic book buyers. Some gorgeous art in this one. And the final book pitted the Uncanny X-Men and the New Teen Titans. And this one might be the best one of all. And if you want to know why, look at that back cover. Oh, yep, Darkseid. Darkseid versus the X-Men. Not going to be something wrong with that. So let's take a look at these books one at a time. I'll show off some of the art. I'll give you my thoughts on the stories, and we will go from there. Okay. So we'll start with the first. The Battle of the Century. The thriller from... No, that's not right. We're going to start with the Battle of the Century. Superman versus the Amazing Spider-Man. Man, I'm sure pulling this thing off was not easy, given some of the egos involved. Let's see if I can get this framed a little better. Okay. So at last, the greatest team up of all... No, look at that. Now I just bumped into the camera. All right. At last, the greatest team up of all time, Superman and the Amazing Spider-Man. Presented by Carmine Infantino and Stan Lee. Written by... There we go. Jerry Conway. Drawn by Ross Andrew. Inked by Dick Giordano. Lettered by Gaspar Saladino. Colored by Jerry Serpi. Produced by Saul Harrison with an assist from Jack Adler. Consulting, editing, bring it up a little bit, by Roy Thomas, Julius Schwartz, Marv Wolfman, E. Nelson Bridwell. Let's take a look. And this is the first reason that these comics are worth getting. Look at this splash page. Again, it's hard to deal with a comic this big and film it without bumping the stupid camera, so you'll have to excuse a little bit of that shakiness there. But just look at this. You got Superman flying in. You got this massive robot smashing through the middle of a building. I mean, this is fantastic. It makes me wish they made a few books like this nowadays. Well, maybe they do that I'm unaware of. But we are introduced to the story here. Can you guess who's in that giant robot? I bet you probably can. Look at that. Krong! As it smacks Superman. He has to catch a piece of a building so kids don't get hurt, or people don't get hurt, or anybody doesn't get hurt. So he battles this giant robot. Great sound effects, great art. It really is. It's really strong. There's a little troublemaker right there. Lex Luthor himself, Mr. Luthor. So eventually, Superman manages to defeat the robot, more or less. But he doesn't quite catch sight of what's really going on. Comes back to work. This is the era where Clark Kent was both a news anchor and still doing the reporting. This is the jerk, Steve Lombard, who plays pranks on him and causes him a lot of trouble. His boss, Morgan Edge. A few more nice pieces. As he kind of figures out, you know what, I think I made a mistake. I think Luthor actually got away here. He goes underwater to confront him in yet another giant death machine. Luthor's a punk. Gets him with this like kryptonite ray, these lasers. Supes finally gets the better of him though. Causes a flood inside his little death machine, and Luthor hightails it out of there before first. Oh, the dog's losing his mind. Perfect. Before finally, Luthor escapes and Clark, Luthor doesn't escape. Clark gets a hold of him. I'm calling him Clark. I'm on a first name basis with the guy. Superman gets a hold of him, and Luthor's going to prison. And then we get a page that explains who Superman is, which is where you can tell this was somewhat designed for the non-comic book reading audience to introduce characters. And then we move to the Spider-Man portion of the show here. And we get Spidey taking on Dr. Octopus, who is, I don't want to say robbing a museum. So, again, good art, strong art. They really are making use of the larger page sizes. And so Spidey does not, in fact, catch Dr. Octopus. Has a run-in with J. Jonah Jameson, as you would expect, who has come to the conclusion that, in fact, Spider-Man and Dr. Octopus were working together. So ultimately, though, Spidey catches on. This fake blimp has Dr. Octopus's machine or flying machine in it, and he, as you can see, kind of takes it down. Really strong art. Well done. And then, of course, we get the page about the Amazing Spider-Man, where he comes from. Nobody knows who you are. And we flip to Doc Ock and Luthor in prison together in New Mexico. They were breaking bad. They had to go up the river. So this ultimately launches Lex Luthor's master plan. which you'll be quite surprised to discover involves world domination. And he kind of uses Dr. Octopus in this plan to get what he wants. And we do get a little stuff on those two as they escape. Come on, how great is that? Lex Luthor riding on Dr. Octopus's back. There is definitely a bit of this sort of... there's a little bit of goofy DC energy in this one. So we ultimately have this... that's all kind of prologue. So we have this big convention for the news industry. And here we can see Lois Lane and Clark Kent. We got Mary Jane and Peter Parker. We got Jay Jonah, who was fired. Peter once again. There's Robbie. They confront one another as they are wont to do, and Peter basically tells them to pound sand, which is kind of nice. And we also discover that Clark is losing his job because there's a political convention coming up, national convention, and they don't want Clark. They don't want Clark to do it. They want somebody like Walter Cronkite or Roger Mudd or Dan Rather. I remember those names. And so, some problems arise. We have a little meeting between Peter and Lois. Peter has kind of the hots for her. MJ is a little bit angry at this. And have a little bit of a confrontation there. Lois is pretty much saying, yeah, Pete's a little young for me, and by the way, I have Superman. I'm sorry, I'm not interested. And all of a sudden, Superman appears out of nowhere, in this panel here, and seems to blast Mary Jane and Lois out of existence. And that's the end of the comic. Superman's murdered them both. No, in fact, he hasn't done any such thing. How could you even think that? Good Lord. But this leads to a little fight. Spidey's pretty sure Superman's responsible for what happened, and Superman's heard some bad reports via the Daily Bugle because, he's a reporter, so he doesn't realize that most news is less than accurate. Especially coming out of the Daily Bugle. And so, obviously, he thinks Spidey's responsible. Spidey thinks he's responsible. This gets them into a little brouhaha. Oh, what's this? Ah, yes, it was a fake Superman. It was Luthor all along. And Luthor uses this kryptonite gun to zap Spidey, which basically gives Spidey a lot more oomph. And Spidey... boom! Kapow! Gives Superman what for. And even Spidey is a little bit shocked at this. Let's see if I can slide this over a little bit. This is so much easier with normal-sized comic books. You see him crashing into him there. Now, ultimately, our two heroes figure out that there's something going on here. And there we have, this is actually pretty good. Superman decides he's finally had enough of taking abuse, and he's gonna pop Spider-Man 1, and he realizes, whoa, I can't do this. I'm gonna kill him if I hit him full force. So he pulls his punch. The shockwave knocks Spider-Man for a loop. Look at that art. How fantastic is this? And so it sends Spidey through a building, and basically that kryptonite ray is worn off. Spidey kind of figures out he's in trouble, but Superman's already figured out, you know what, you're not the bad guy here. He's kind of figured things out, and so they form a team. Glory be, they form a team. and start trying to figure out what actually has happened. They track things down to a warehouse that is sort of a death trap. They go through some rough stuff, some holographic images of Luthor and Dr. Octopus. They end up in Africa using this computer to figure out where they were. So they fly to Africa with essentially Spider-Man is sort of like air skiing behind Superman. We don't see enough of that. And another guy has been kind of brainwashed and given, superpowers by Luthor. So they kind of deal with him together. And they get into this base. And from that base, Luthor has launched up to this satellite. That was it's the quarantined, as it says here, the quarantined satellite headquarters of the Injustice Gang. He's even got a little Injustice Gang logo on his spaceship. Well, these would have made fantastic toys. And of course, we're starting to see the partnership between the two of them fray a little bit. Here we have Morgan Edge and J. Jonah Jameson complaining about their reporters that cause them trouble. So what Luthor ultimately does here is tie into this news, I think it's a news satellite, a communication satellite, and he's going to use this to wreak untold havoc upon the world. Do Spider-Man and Superman stop him? Can't tell you. It's a secret. Look at that, though. And I think if you look online, you'll see that Alex Ross has recreated that, and I believe he also recreated the cover. All right, so what do we think about this one? The art's fantastic, and it really uses that extra space. You get some really great large images of these guys. The story's a little bit goofy. I don't know, for some reason Luthor and Dr. Octopus, they make sense in as much as they're arch enemies of our two heroes, but I don't know, the two of them to me didn't mesh all that well. Dr. Octopus is obviously smart, but he's also kind of physical in the way he fights with those tentacles. And I don't know if it was used to the best use. So the story's a little bit goofy, but it's not bad. It's a fun adventure. It's a definite romp. You could feel that maybe has a little bit more of a pull from DC than Marvel in terms of how the story is told. But overall, I like it, and I'm glad I got it. And that was one I didn't have until recently. I went ahead and spent a few dollars to get it. So that book came out, I've already forgotten what year it was, as I hit the stupid camera again. 1976? Yeah, 1976, we get this book. So apparently it did well enough that they were going to do another book. And we get that next one in 1981, so 5-year gap. And as I understand it, this comic was driven a little bit more by Marvel than by DC. This one links Doctor Doom and the Parasite. It's kind of funny. The DC, maybe the heavier DC first issue, Luthor kind of outshines Doctor Doom. Dr. Octopus. Superman and Spider-Man kind of, they work together well, actually. It's always hard to work Superman with somebody else because of how powerful he is, but it works. The Marvel one, Doom really kind of outshines the Parasite. It's almost like the bad guys, for each respective company, were not as evil as the heroes. So this one's drawn by John Buscema. Good Lord. I'll tell you what, the credits are written a lot smaller. Hold on, I got to pull this over here so I can even read this thing. So, script by Jim Shooter, pencils by John Buscema, figures inked by Joe Sinnott, backgrounds Terry Austin, inked by Klaus Janson. Backgrounds Terry Austin, Bob McLeod, Steve Lealoa, and Bob Layton. Inked by Klaus Janson, Al Milgram, Walt Simonson, Joe Rubenstein. Bob Wyachek apparently did backgrounds and inking. Lettering by Joe Rosen, coloring by Glynis Wine, edited by Alan Milgram. That's funny because it's always... Oh, special thanks to Marv Wolfman for plot suggestions. So this one I've had for a while, and in all honesty, my memory was I liked it okay. I didn't love it a lot. I just reread it, and don't go on this camera. And I got to say, I enjoyed it a lot more than I'd remembered. This one starts off with Spidey. Got to be honest, not as great a splash page as the previous one, but it's Buscema, so I mean, the art is good throughout. And we have Spidey tangling with these crooks in this construction site. Dr. Doom, of course, is behind things. Now, what's kind of cool about this one is we don't just get Superman and Spider-Man, we also get Hulk and Wonder Woman. And so Hulk is part of Dr. Doom's plan. We get another confrontation. We get Peter Parker walking out again. Pretty angry with J. Jonah. Go figure. So it heats up. We get a meeting at Galaxy Communications because the Hulk has been spotted near Metropolis. And what are they going to do? And how are they going to deal with it? And they want Clark to be the anchorman. And Clark's like, I'd really rather go out so I could be Superman. Save everybody. Too bad. Hulk does in fact show up in downtown Metropolis, and Superman basically uses his powers to convince his co-workers that that Hulk's right outside their building and it's going to fall down. So that's how he slips away. And so we actually, before we get really any Superman, Spider-Man action, we get Superman, Hulk. Whoa, God bless America. So professional here. But we do get Superman versus the Hulk, which is pretty darn cool. The Hulk sort of gets a lucky shot on Superman. Supes, kind of gets out of it. Spidey shows up at that time in Metropolis. Decides to take some pictures. Sees if he can maybe help a little bit. Of course, he's kind of like going, oh boy, maybe I've made a big mistake here. Maybe I shouldn't be trying to help. And we get this great scene. With Superman saying, hold it, Spider-Man. Huh? You're still alive after taking that punch? Alive and a little annoyed. Step aside, son. This is a job for Superman. Hey, hold on, big shot. What am I, the water boy? And so this is where I love this line. Not this time, Hulk. You caught me by surprise once. This time I'm ready. And when I'm ready, and I don't want to be moved, no power on earth can move me. And so he's basically, the idea is he's going to wear the Hulk down. But what he figures out is there's this weird little drone buzzing in the Hulk's ear that's making him kind of crazy. And he manages to grab it and destroy it. And when the noise is gone, the Hulk finally calms down and turns back into Banner. But in the meantime, He has managed to open up a prison underground in which Superman had put the parasite. And so the parasite manages to escape. And he drains a little power, kind of from far away from Spider-Man. So ultimately, Spidey gets a job here with the Daily Planet. Clark Kent takes a leave of action and leave of absence and goes to New York. He confronts Dr. Doom. Now, obviously, Dr. Doom is the ruler of Latveria, and he has a diplomatic immunity, and he's on his own soil when he's in his embassy. Supes can't really do anything about it. But Doom decides, I'm going to go ahead and try to kill him anyways, because obviously this guy's going to get in my way. Superman manages to escape it. He rolls himself up in the lead flooring that Doom had installed so his X-ray vision wouldn't work, and he defeats this kryptonite ray, and just kind of lets Dr. Doom know, buddy, I'm watching you. And so you can see the other one, the art was a little bit more spectacular in terms of the way it was presented. This one is a little more like standard comic book, but again, it's John Buscema, so the art's gorgeous. And so essentially we get Spider-Man working in Metropolis, we get Superman working in New York. He's, stopping robberies, and he's helping airplanes land. Doing all the good Superman stuff that you're supposed to do. Meanwhile, Dr. Doom has captured the Hulk and has him in this stasis tube. But why? What is he going to do with him? The parasite gets a little mouthy, and Doom sort of is like, buddy, don't try anything. I am Doom. You can't stop me. He backs off, but he'll have his revenge. So Spidey, meanwhile, tries to do a little crime fighting in Metropolis. And it goes wrong, and the police now want Spider-Man. And he's like, yeah, crying out loud. Can't anything ever go right? But he kind of gets this hint that there's something going on with him. He's off a little bit. And so he notices, hey, man, here's another one of those construction sites, like where I fought those goons earlier. Let me take a look at it. And he finds this little steel trapdoor. And sure enough, he gets underneath there and finds a base of Dr. Doom. Dr. Doom has been putting bases under cities, and he discovers Wonder Woman. Da, 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 da. And Wonder Woman is tricked into thinking Spidey is a bad guy, so she's trying to take Spider-Man out. He actually deals with it pretty well. He kills the lights, kind of gets in behind her, taps her on the shoulder, and he's like, hey, all right, I could have taken you out. I am not the bad guy, okay? Which she kind of figures out, too. But ultimately, Wonder Woman is also captured. Spidey catches this underground train back to New York, and here's where they figure out the plan. And we'll stop with the plan. But the plan by Dr. Doom is to unleash some kind of I think it was like an energy wave that will destroy all fossil fuels. And then he's going to basically take out every other form of energy production. And he's going to have his own nuclear fusion plant underneath New York that will supply energy for the whole world. But of course, they will have to put Doom in charge of the world. And that's the big plot. His problem, though, is, well, I won't tell you the problem. But there's a lot of double dealing. And there is actually a really fantastic scene with Superman later in this one where he has to push himself to the absolute limit and knows he's going to probably die in the process. but he says, "Hey, I'm Superman. I mean, if I'm not on Earth to do this, what am I here for? This is what I'm here to do things that nobody else can, to save people's lives." So, do Superman and Spider-Man manage to stop the two evil guys? Can't tell you. You're going to have to read and find out. What's really fantastic about both of these books, there's no traveling, between dimensions. Nothing like that. It's just, look, these characters, they all inhabit the same world. And this issue actually does reference the first meeting of Superman and Spider-Man. There's a bit where Spider-Man is introduced to Lana Lang, who he also kind of has a crush on, and Lois Lane, and Lois is like, "Oh yes, we met." Well, I'm talking Peter Parker here, not Spider-Man, but she goes, "Oh yes, I remember meeting a few years back." Yada yada yada. So I kind of like that. There's no attempt here to have some kind of weird cross world. It's just, look, in this world, the DC and Marvel heroes all exist together. Nothing fancy, and for some reason they don't fight each other very often. But I like that. It's kind of fun. It's to be honest, like when you're a kid, that's kind of how you picture it, anyways. You kind of picture everybody being in the same little world. So the next book that they did together. Oh, wait a minute. Did I get that wrong? This is 81. Maybe this one came before. Oh, what the heck. Batman versus the Incredible Hulk. You can see, not a great copy, but it's readable. It seems like this would be an odd pairing. It actually works really well. It's maybe one of my favorites in this little series. Hey, that one actually sits flat. That's a blessing. So, we have Batman in a history-making confrontation with the mightiest man-brute to ever walk the earth, the Incredible Hulk. So pull up a ringside seat for the single most astonishing epic in the annals of adventuredom. Join us to meet the monster and the madman. I absolutely love old comic books. I love the use of language. So this one, written by Lin Wein. I'm probably pronouncing his name wrong. I'm sorry. But I'm going to say Lin Wein. Anyways, illustrated by Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. Let's see. Dick Giordano is the inker and editor. Okay. John Costanza, letterer. Glynis Wine, colorist. Al Milgram, Jim Shooter, consulting editors. With thanks to Marv Wolfman and Mike DiCarlo for their help. So this is a really interesting story because the bad guys, not only the Joker, but also the Shaper of Worlds. And he doesn't show up too much anymore. He doesn't get too much mention. I think what makes this my favorite is the art. Man, I just love his art. It's so clean. It just works, and he's interesting with it. So we start off with the Joker, and he's going to pull this heist at Wayne Foundation. Absolutely beautiful. What the heck? Okay. I know, I got to get a better setup for this stuff. So we have Bruce Banner getting a job at a Wayne Foundation facility where they're working on a gamma gun. that supposedly is going to cure all the world's ills. He hopes it can cure him. He's just kind of working as a janitor under an assumed name. When the Joker strikes, he gets into a suit to escape the fumes of the Joker gas, sets off the alarm, but in the process, oh yeah, he hulks out. He goes for it. But fortunately, at least for the Joker in a way, Batman arrives, and the Joker very cleverly convinces the Hulk, hey man, I'm your buddy here, you know? I'm your friend. I got green hair too. That's the bad guy. Look at that. Look at oh, it's great. And look at Joker. You know, get him, Hulk. Alright, so Batman versus Hulk. Seems like this ought to be a pretty short fight. Batman manages to stay more or less out of the Hulk's way, which is making the Hulk angrier and angrier. The Hulk finally gets a hold of Batman. Yeah, the Hulk was going to break his spine before Bane ever showed up, before he was a twinkle in his creator's eyes. Batman manages to slam the Hulk on the sides of his ears to get him to drop him. And I really love this because it comes down to, this is how Batman wins. It's not overpowering necessarily. He drops these gas capsules. Hulk holds his breath. Batman uses his knowledge of anatomy to hit him just in the right spot to cause him to exhale that breath and suck in all that gas. And the gas puts the Hulk to sleep. Joker manages to get away. Some fantastic art. I love this. This scene with the buildings actually reminds me of it reminds me a little bit of the maps from the Marvel Superheroes role-playing game. So Batman slinks off into the night, but he shows up as Bruce Wayne and talks with Bruce Banner, and he's going to give him a job. So why is the Joker stealing this gamma gun? It is to cure the Shaper of Worlds. He kind of got in the way of a supernova, and he's kind of losing his ability to make people's dreams a reality. And not being able to do that anymore is going to drive him mad. And so he comes to Earth, and he discovers the Joker, a mind unique in all the universe. Look at that. Isn't that fantastic? And so he's going to need this. The gamma gun doesn't work. They need somebody who maybe knows a few things about gamma radiation. And Joker better find that person, who of course is Dr. Banner. So now Bruce Wayne has set up Dr. Banner on this this old tanker. He's put all this gear there so he could work on this gamma gun and presumably be safe from potentially destroying Gotham City. Alfred is out there looking after him. Some great art with Alfred. Batman goes looking for the Joker. What's he up to? Look at that. Look at that. I love it. I love it. I love the art in this one so much. It's not just well drawn. It's interesting use of panels, but not an interesting use of panels every single panel, right? I mean, or every page. Sometimes you get a relatively normal layout, and then sometimes you get some really interesting stuff. So there's a raid on the boat. The Joker's men, disguised as U.S. Air Force, take Banner away, or at least that's the plan. And Banner kind of freaks out. as he's wont to do. They say, hey, no problem, we're going to electrocute this guy. That'll deal with him. And it doesn't really work. And so one of the head crook is like, wow, man, I wish there was some monster here that could defeat the Hulk. Well, Shaper of Worlds creates that monster. He's like this weird dough thing, and he ultimately captures the Hulk and takes him back. You see this great one. There's the Hulk. We also get a brief little bit with Thunderbolt Ross and Doc Samson, just for a moment. So ultimately, Hulk escapes. He is, after all, the strongest one there is. The Joker is in charge of getting the Hulk back. He decides, let's bring Batman into this. Maybe Batman can help. So Batman and the Joker go out looking for the Hulk. They find him, and of course the Hulk doesn't want to listen to anything. And they end up in a big fight, which this time Batman does not win. They both end up buried in the rubble of a parking garage. Here's a great scene, though, of the Hulk throwing a car at Batman and Batman jumping through the windows. You know. But there's definitely that moment where he goes, oh boy. Good God, he means it. And backed against this wall, there's no way for me to avoid that sedan. You don't say that every day. And so he manages to, survive, of course. And they kind of trick the Hulk into going with them to this Shaper of Worlds by Batman disguising himself as a blind man. And unfortunately, the Shaper has gone completely insane. Oh, here's we always have the Robin smack. Well, here we get one from Batman because the Joker's like, I ain't going in there. I'm not going to help. So we get the manifestation of some of their arch enemies in their dreams. They have to fight the leader, the Rhino, the Abomination, Scarecrow, Killer Moth, and Two-Face. But they're really just nightmares. They ultimately get in, and so the Shaper is sort of rescued from his madness by absorbing the gamma radiation of the Hulk. And that would be fine. Hey, we won, right? Everybody's saved. Except the Joker had a deal with the Shaper. And now the Joker gets to reshape the world with his imagination. And obviously that's a bad thing. So how do they get out of it? Well, I'll leave that to everybody to read. But Batman uses his smarts, as he usually does. And then we see kind of an image of those two fighting their various foes. The story works in this one pretty well, and it's a weird story to have to try to tell. But they really make use of the characters nicely, and again, you have that amazing art from Lopez. I can't say enough about it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And this is another one that really uses the size of the book to its advantage. You get a lot of really stunning images that just look fantastic at that increased size. So I think this is my favorite of the books. I think it's maybe, I think it's the best story. I think in second place I would put this book here, Superman and Spider-Man. The story hangs together really well. But this, again, gorgeous art in this one by Andrew, and very much worth taking a look at. So we finally come to the last of these crossovers. If I can grab this thing. Now, I bought this book years ago at a comic book shop called The Comic Domain. run by Mike Smith. Now here we have a normal size comic, so I can actually fit this thing in frame a little easier. There you go. Oh, the comic domain, 2411 Southeastern. Long gone, unfortunately. Had a lot of fun there, though. Good memories of that place. I think that this book, when you really get down to it, is the best of the bunch. Written by Chris Claremont. Art by Walt Simonson. You're getting Jack Kirby's, New Gods, done by Walt Simonson, who obviously did beautiful things with Jack Kirby's other invention, the Mighty Thor and Asgard and all the rest. And you just can't beat it. The story is really good. Chris Claremont had a way of he was a storyteller. He didn't say, well, okay, we need Superman and Spider-Man, they're going to fight, what are we going to have it? What's going to be the problem that they have to solve? Yeah, that's fairly standard comic book fare, and I love it. But Claremont always takes it up a notch. He's telling a bigger story, usually, and he does here, and he has Walt Simonson to do it with. I'm not going to go heavily into this one, but it involves Darkseid, it involves Dark Phoenix, and the X-Men and Teen Titans. Now, again, they exist in the same world in this one. There's no moving between dimensions, which at first I thought maybe there was, because Metron is involved, and he goes into the source wall, and I thought, oh, is he going to combine the two worlds or bring the Titans with him, blah, 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 blah. No, he doesn't. This is one where they just exist in the same world. So that you're getting the X-Men after the whole Dark Phoenix story. You're getting the Teen Titans before the Teen Titans have gone through the whole Terra storyline. But there were so many similarities between these two teams. They were rapidly starting to become kind of the big deal at their respective companies. And rightly so. They were both very well done at the time. They had a lot of energy. They were doing things that some of the other books just weren't, frankly, doing. So basically, the X-Men all have these weird dreams with Phoenix in it. Very disturbing to Scott. Raven in Titan's Tower has a similar nightmare. And when she's trying to tell what she sees, Beast Boy tries to take the form of what she's describing, which Starfire sees as the Phoenix, and she immediately attacks it and almost kills Beast Boy, who generally probably deserved it. But she tells the story of the Dark Phoenix because, being from another world, she's aware of it. And so they summon everybody together in Titan's Tower. Meanwhile, Robin is dealing with a break-in at Star Labs. And it happens to be a break-in by parademons, whom he hasn't encountered before, apparently. And they're led by the Terminator, who looks awesome in this book. So he's still Robin here. He has not yet become Nightwing. What ultimately happens is the Titans decide that the X-Men are involved in all this because of the Phoenix. They're aware of their involvement with her. And they decide to attack the X-Men. And there's really kind of a great scene when they do. Starfire just cracks right through the wall and almost takes out Professor X. Just like that. But what happens is the X-Men aren't there. But at the same time, Darkseid's forces attack the mansion as well. And they assume that the Titans are the X-Men who they're looking for. And there's actually a great scene in here with Robin saying, you know what, guys? We can't just bust into a mansion when we want to. We need to obey the law. He's still Batman's sidekick. So we get a big slugfest. Meanwhile, the X-Men go to this mesa where Phoenix once was because they figured out that these bad guys are trying to siphon off like psychic energy. So we get Terminator versus Wolverine for a moment. Wolverine gets a good shot in on him. And the X-Men take on the forces of Darkseid. And they lose. And here we see, I got a comic book that is coming apart. But look at this. Walt Simonson doing the New Gods. Holy mackerel. Walt Simonson could do Jack Kirby like nobody else. There was enough similarity in their drawing style, as distinct as they are, that it just worked. It just worked. So ultimately, Darkseid needs that Phoenix psychic power, and he also absorbs energy from the X-Men and the Teen Titans. And da-da-da-da-da-da. Who summons Dark Phoenix? I, Darkseid. Oh, so good. And they whisk off to Earth to destroy it, to create a new apocalypse. And the X-Men and the Teen Titans have to get very creative. Sorry about that. Got to get those pages back in there. They have to get very creative in order to stop them. And as with everything that Claremont worked on, it ain't just about brute strength or outsmarting your opponents. There's a lot of heart to it that kind of works off of not only the X-Men's feelings for Jean Grey, but Scott's in particular. It's really well written, and of all of these books, and these treasury-sized books are a little hard to come by and not cheap. Of all of them, though, I probably recommend the X-Men Teen Titans one the most, especially if you come from that era and haven't read them for a while. Getting back in touch with the Teen Titans and the X-Men, kind of at their height of creativity, it's really beautiful. I really enjoyed it. So that's it, folks. This has been a long video. I haven't done one this long for a while, and obviously the professionalism was rather low. But hopefully you got something out of it. Go check these comic books out. They're all worthwhile. They're all event comics, and they all work on one level or another. Again, I think X-Men Teen Titans is the best of the bunch, but the other ones are worthwhile, and the art is gorgeous. Oh, this is such a great time period for Marvel and for DC in terms of the art. Real wonderful blast from the past. You can find these on eBay. They're not necessarily very cheap, but you can find them, and you could probably find scanned versions of them somewhere out there, you know. Probably better left unsaid how you find those scanned copies, but go seek them out. Go read them. These are good books. Beautiful art. Well written. They really take you back to when Marvel and DC were knocking it out of the park. So with that, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you've enjoyed the videos I've been doing, please subscribe. That really helps me out. And I would love to hear what you think about these titles and these team-ups, and really anything else that you'd like to leave in the comments. I'd be happy to hear. You know, as long as you're not calling me a big idiot or something. But maybe I need to hear that anyway, so do what you want to do. I will see you next time around. In the meantime, have an awesome time out there. be kind to one another, and I'll see you again soon in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Whoops. See, I'm moving everything because I'm trying to get to my mouse so I can actually stop recording. I could probably edit that part out, but I won't. Bye-bye.